Well, from minerals to the Middle East, where Israel is in the midst of a major pressure campaign on Hamas to free the remaining Israeli hostages, 24 of which are believed to be alive. Just a short time ago, the IDF saying it eliminated Hamas's head of military intelligence in southern Gaza. Israel's defense minister vowing to seize more territory in Gaza and intensify attacks unless Hamas turns over the hostages. Earlier today, weakened Hamas fired projectiles at Israel, setting off alarms in the southern part of the country as the Israelis ramp up attacks on Hamas, but in Gaza. Now, the Iranian-backed Houthis in Yemen, they're launching ballistic missiles at Israel. The IDF says it was able to intercept the missiles outside of Israel's borders. Retired Rear Admiral Mark Montgomery served 32 years in the Navy as a nuclear-trained surface warfare officer. Admiral Montgomery is now senior director at the Foundation for Defense of Democracies. He joins me now to sort through all of these geopolitical moves. And I do want to start with Israel and Hamas to kind of give me your assessment because the Red Sea certainly has been a pivot point and a hot zone for not just the Israelis, but for U.S. forces as well.
Well, thank you for having me.
So what is your assessment of where we are with Israel and Hamas? The new news, which may not surprise you or many in the military, is that Israel is now saying they will seize control, they will seize land in Gaza, and they will move the Palestinians out if those hostages are not returned, dead or alive.
Yeah, that's exactly it. I think the Israeli government got tired of the slow pace of the hostage removal and the recognition that they were going to have to concede too much in the current agreement to get to the second phase. So they've very aggressively acted here. I think they've done what we should almost always consider doing, which is a maximum pressure campaign. They're bringing maximum pressure to bear on Hamas to get these hostages released. I think we're starting to see the Hamas negotiating position break down on this, and I think we could, in the next few days, see the beginnings of an agreement to release some of the remaining Israeli hostages and bodies of Israelis killed either on October 7th or in the time since October 7th.
Yeah, and I also want to turn your attention to, and this kind of plays into what we're talking about, which is, of course, the protection of U.S. ships, not just military ships, but also commercial ships in the region, in particular because the Houthis have been continuing to attack, and they've been using drones. I want to ask you about this. We got this new announcement out of the White House from the Pentagon today with Hegseth and President Trump about these new jets. One of the things that, and Roger Wicker, Senator from Mississippi, points out, is this is a broader effort for peace through strength, but he says he wants to work with the president on a scale up of collaborative combat aircraft. And he says that supercharges B-21 bomber production. And this really energizes the entire industrial base. What is your reaction to that? What does that mean in reality to you?
So first, I'll tell you, you're exactly right. We are beginning to ramp up our response to the Houthis, and it's time for us to do a maximum pressure campaign against Iran and probably deal with them directly instead of just their Houthi proxies. This F-47 will be part of a future effort, and I think along with the collaborative combat aircraft and the B-21 represents our power projection capabilities in the 2030s and beyond. I was glad to see the F-47. We've revealed for the first time that the Boeing and Lockheed have been flying already, so we may only be like years away from having the F-47 in our force structure, not a decade away like sometimes happens after initial announcement. So I'm excited about that, excited about the CCAs. That's the loyal wingmen flying alongside unmanned aircraft, flying alongside the F-47 that will be critical to reducing U.S. combat casualties when conducting like deep penetration airstrikes.
Well, I also want to lean on your experience, your Navy experience, because, I want to talk about ships and China. Because China is arguably right now, you could say, the biggest military threat. Xi Jinping, we know that there's maybe going to be a meeting between President Trump and Xi Jinping to be determined, peace through strength. Maybe there's a conversation to be had. But their shipbuilding capabilities and the amount of ships that they have dwarfs what the United States does right now. Does that concern you?
Certainly, and it's both military shipping and merchant shipping. So they're building about 8 or 9 times as many military ships a year as we do. But in addition, they're building nearly 200 times as many merchant ships a year as we do. And, you know, as a result, we've got to find alternative solutions than just U.S. shipbuilding when it comes to repairing our ships, or even potentially in the future building probably non-warships, you know, logistics ships at good foreign shipyards like in Korea and Japan, countries that have shown an ability to compete with China in terms of shipbuilding costs.
So, you know, I guess my next question is there already a movement within the Navy to make sure that we have our best, our strongest in the Indo-Pacific region? I mean, I know we've got ships, you know, near Israel. I understand that, but I'm just wondering if the bigger threat is China, in your opinion.
It is, and in fact, we have shifted so that more than 50% of our fleet is on the west coast of the United States, or in Hawaii, or in Japan. My son's on a ship in Japan, in fact, as we speak now. That more than 50% of our ships committed to this. We're increasing the number. We're working hard to increase the number of ships. I think the president, Senator Wicker, and the president will put forward a shipbuilding plus up. That is, some of the reconciliation money will go directly to an extra, I would say, probably between $40 and $50 billion over several years in shipbuilding. That's going to be necessary to compete with this Chinese investment. The challenge is going to be our shipbuilding industry. It needs to be ready to absorb that extra capacity, that extra ability to build, and we don't really have the workforce or the equipment to do that right now.
Real quick before you go, I do want to get your thoughts, just because this is going to be coming up on Monday, these new talks between the United States and Ukraine, and then the United States and Russia. What is your overall sentiment about this restart of negotiations?
So my sense is that President Trump has run a pretty good maximum pressure campaign on Ukraine, and he's gotten them to concede both on the critical minerals deal, but also on a reasonable way forward with the Russians to resolve, to get to a ceasefire. What we haven't done yet is run a maximum pressure campaign on President Putin through sanctions, through increased support to Ukraine, things that will cause Vladimir Putin to want to make a good faith effort in negotiations with Ukraine under U.S. auspices. I haven't seen that maximum pressure campaign yet. Once we see that, we'll see Russia begin to buckle and come to the table in an appropriate manner.
I'm assuming that sanctions could be a very powerful tool, and President Trump has mentioned that. So we'll see if that is indeed what is used. Admiral Montgomery, thank you so much, sir, for your time. Thank you for your service to our country, sir.
Thank you for having me.